multi-tool?
You just come up with creative solutions.
How do they work?
Like I teach guys.
No, it's a construction multi-tool.
Crazy question.
No, it's a handheld.
Oscillating one? The oscillating one?
Yeah, but it's got like a little blade like this with little edges on it.
Yeah, it's the oscillating one.
What does it do? Does it go this way?
It goes both ways.
I could never figure out how to make it work.
But it cannot be, it will not cut something that is not firm. So if there is any give at all,
Oh,
it will not.
well then I just use the Sawzall.
Did you get your house sandbag yet?
My arms
I saw the link
Across the street.
Coming up.
You're all dressed up.
Well,
Wow.
I've got another meeting after this one, so.
It must be a church
It's
meeting.
a churchy meeting, yeah. Yeah, we always gotta have a churchy meeting.
If there's barriers.
Last time it got canceled. So maybe I'll get lucky again.
Hello, council members. Hi,
Hello.
Jeannie.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
How are you?
How are you?
We're only missing
You
one.
ready for the budget?
Are you ready to do the quick?
I don't know. I missed it last time. Did you see?
You missed the thing, yeah.
Yeah, I went like, oh, and
Well,
it's not
you need to kind of get your arm.
Gotta have some practice.
Yeah, I guess.
More practice, that's
there.
what it
Do
is.
Jeannie gonna be.
the Thor action
I
here.
think so. Amy didn't say she was not going to make it, right? Imagine.
We can start without her, it'll be fine.
5:31.
She'll come.
Are you ready to go?
Let's
You
do it.
betcha.
Are we
Ready,
live?
willing, and
On
able.
YouTube?
Yep,
Are we on YouTube as well?
ready to roll.
Welcome everyone to our budget workshop. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, and I'm calling our meeting into order.
Welcome, both of you.
And looks like our beginning and our overview is by Rich, our finance director.
Remember, your budget counts on this.
You walked through it. You walked me fun through it. The mayor did a very good job in her budget message, is highlighting all of the major issues, so I won't rehash those. However, I will answer any questions that you have after I hit two quick items. The first is our transfers notice. Statutory requirement, we do it every year. The end result is that if we didn't have transfers, but we wanted the same amount of funding, we'd have to raise property taxes by about 2.5 times whatever each individual is paying for property tax. That's why we do transfers. We will hold our public hearing on June 20th, along with the adoption of the budget. And this is the required disclosure. All of those items are required, therefore they're on there. They're not on there because they make sense, because many of them don't.
And it goes out with our utility bill, doesn't it?
It does go out with the utility bills. It's also posted on our website and will be until we adopt for next one. Any questions on transfers other than that? I have a spiel I'll give, but I'll save that for the June 20th meeting.
So let's say somebody had an issue when they saw it on their utility bill, and they're like, what, we're transferring this? And they really wanted to question that. What is the process for that?
They can either come to the public hearing, or better, if they want to really understand it, they can call. And I field maybe 10 to 15 calls per year, usually. And I have yet to have a person leave my office saying, please stop doing transfers. They usually say, I don't agree, I don't like it, but you should continue doing that. Just because they see the logic of it as well.
You're saying 250%.
250% increase in whatever they're paying for property tax. The reason is most of our property, or not, at least half of our property is not taxable. With the university, the churches, the federal buildings, the state buildings, the county buildings, the city buildings. 50% of our property, and we actually think it's more like 60%, but the county doesn't assess non-taxable property because that's a giant waste of time for them.
That's a huge incentive.
Huge. It's not right for every city, but I think it's right for ours for now. Second item is our risk fraud risk assessment. This is a requirement from the state auditor's office. You can see out of a possible 395 points, we received 375. The Utah Local Governance Trust now uses this to ensure against cybersecurity. So they use this.
Insure against cyber
If you don't
cyber
get
fraud.
356 points or more, then there's some questions as to whether they will insure you against cyber fraud.
Okay.
This is the Utah Local Governance Trust. I think it's marginally useful. It's okay.
You have one item marked no, number 4,
Yeah.
and annual certification, et cetera.
Yes.
Is that because you have a long-running certification? I mean, it says annual.
It's just too difficult. I don't think it's worth the 20 points. Plus, I don't think it's very useful. Having somebody say, "I promise not to commit fraud," isn't going to commit fraud.
Well, we do it when we sign up to run for office.
That's every 4 years.
But this would have to be
And
done
that covers
annually,
it.
and I don't think you can actually achieve those points even if you try to put it in place. You couldn't have everyone commit annually. A city of 10 people, yes, they can, and that's perfect for those cities. A city like City of Logan, 400 employees, 200 part-time. It's not gonna happen.
So is everyone will have to sign up?
Everyone would have to sign. So that's why we don't go after those points. But we do all the rest of them, and we think we do a pretty good job. This is a good guideline.
We have a
It's-
fraud risk hotline.
We have a fraud risk hotline. We send out emails periodically asking for things. That does not go to finance, that goes to administration, and anything that's reported there we do look into. But it's okay, it is what it is. I'm a certified fraud examiner, and if I were to design a fraud risk assessment for the city of Logan, it would not be this. But we do it anyway. And there are some very useful things in there, so.
They
Have
did
we-
send out a form asking us if it was valuable.
Oh, the state,
But yeah,
I responded to it.
I did too.
Yeah, not so valuable.
Me too.
Also, the points, the way they allocate points is like, well, you only allocate this many points for this versus that. It's like, yeah. But it's fine. Again, they're taking care of the entire state. I'm sure if we submitted how we wanted to do ours, they'd say that's probably better for you, so.
Has Logan experienced any fraud in their finances that you're aware of?
There is always fraud happening. I've never found anyone who has stolen money. We've found people who've taken things periodically over the years. My best one was I had I don't know if they still do it, but international envelopes, you know how they have the red, blue, or whatever around the edges. I got one of those from a certain person serving in some part of the world. It was like $20 for, I jumped over, I'm supposing it was a he, didn't have enough, didn't tell me who it was, but he jumped over the fence at the aquatic center and his friends swam in the pool, so he sent me $20. I thought that was pretty funny. Never found
Providing
anything
restitution.
Yeah.
We have had various things happening, and there is always fraud happening. Just because we got 375 out of 395 does not mean we will not have fraud. Fraud is happening constantly because people can't help themselves, and it's just a matter of us keeping that to an immaterial level through our internal controls and trying to catch it as best we can, and setting the right tone at the top, which I believe we set the perfect tone, which is we do not accept it. We do not allow people to take things from the city. We safeguard the assets. We require people to report their time accurately for payroll and those types of things. So I think we set the right tone. It's still happening, and we just need to make sure we're vigilant constantly.
Thank you.
Any questions on any of those? I'll go on to the workshop item, the
Resolution.
fund balance. This is something that we adopted 10 years ago, well, actually about 13 years ago roughly. I think it was 2010 when we did it the first time. It's a resolution establishing fund balance and a debt reserve policy, or a debt policy. So pages, the resolution itself is unchanged from the prior time we adopted it. The attachment A, which is the kind of debt levels and reserve policy language, is completely unchanged. None of that has changed. The only thing that's changed is the kind of rubric for establishing the reserve levels. If you look on the target percentage column, the only things that have changed is the general fund. I am proposing we go from, it was 18% because that was the statutory limitation back in 2010. That statutory limitation is now 35% because the state recognizes cities need to have reserves or they're in trouble in case of major events. So I'm recommending we target 30%. We have to remain below 35, but somewhere in that range is where we should stay. In the library, it was, I think, 25%. I'm suggesting we bump that up to 33, just to be a little bit more conservative. The library does have a very stable revenue source, and that's property tax. However, we have a new library we're going to have to take care of. We ought to be responsible. The golf course was, I think, 33 or 25%. I suggest we increase that to 50%, just because it's a good time right now for golf, and we have good reserves, but we need to have adequate for when the economy turns. And the last change is the 590 Emergency Preparedness Fund on the opposite side. Just suggesting we have a target fund balance of 50%. This is just a new fund. We didn't have it in 2010. That's why we're suggesting those
Can
changes.
you explain why we're up at 100+% on a lot of these items?
Where are you seeing that?
Well, stormwater management is 101%. You want to go to 50. I may not understand that, but you got water and sewer is 198%.
It does. Plugging in what the reserve is a little bit of an art more than a science. It's not just cash on hand, that's the end of it. What I don't necessarily calculate is what's being appropriated, and that reserve will drop down to about $1 million at once all the capital projects that have been planned for that fund have been executed. So yes, we do have higher reserves in some places. However, it's usually restricted. It's usually being accumulated for a capital project. For instance, in the water and sewer fund, you can see we're 190%. We are killing it on our reserve. Well, the problem is we need $50 million to do our water tank.
Water tank.
So a lot of these, I just haven't specified the capital projects that we're saving up for. Is why. But this will just be the target. We can go above the target and we can fall below the target. But if we fall below, we need to have a plan in place to get back up to it, if we're doing it purposefully. If we're doing it because of an emergency, then that's what we got to do.
Did you mention something about the cemetery, or did I miss
sorry.
it?
Yeah, that one was 3 million. Now we're saying we need about 4.5 million. Just the cemetery is a fixed dollar amount rather than a percentage, and it's just based on what we need to maintain the cemetery once we are done burying people there, because then we have to perpetually care for them. And we've done a big enough job, by the way. 18 years ago we had 0. Now we have about 3.2 million, which is amazing. We just need about 4.5, and probably need that to go up. That is everything I've got, unless you have any other questions. I do 3 minutes to that.
Thanks, quiet.
I do not have any comments at the moment.
Anyone?
Nope.
No?
You got to go first.
I know. I got my I'm leaving.
Well, if you don't mind, I will sit because I can't get at the clicker from there, so.
No clicker.
This has changed. It's eating into my 10 minutes.
Dang it.
Oh, no, you got it, yeah, we're back.
Just hit the button.
There's no love, is there?
No. Not in Whoville.
There we go.
I would say duh, but
So this is kind of a fun budget year. When I say fun, that really isn't true. Budgeting is never fun. But the new process this year has been exciting. It's been exciting for the administrative staff of the police department and the potential goodness that we can bring forward into the department and actually become a little bit more in control of the direction of how we spend money and what we'll do with the money. So first of all, let's talk about communications, our 911 fund. Dispatch, obviously, is an enterprise fund such that they have to bring in revenues in order to spend revenues, which differs from the police department because we feed from the public trough, the general fund. So that in mind, obviously, our funding mechanism is county resident funding, our CAN fees, and billed services to UHP, legislative funding, and grants. Of those items that we receive, that brings up the money that, of course, we can spend. Currently, we're struggling a little bit as it relates to less about dollars and cents. Well,
That was a comment.
it's less about the dollars and cents of
That was
what
your
we're
10
talking
that was
about
your 10
tonight.
minutes, yeah.
To try to help you understand why I'm going to ask for what I'm going to ask for. So currently, our our communication operates 3 separate police and fire radio frequency channels, 365 days, 24/7. And that's just part of what they do, but they're constantly using that radio to communicate to those services. Law 1 is the channel that we reserve for the use of Cache County Sheriff's Department and the Utah Highway Patrol. Law 2 is reserved for Logan City Police, North Park Police, and Smithfield City. Ironically, the calls for service for Logan City is greater than all other services combined. We're the busiest. And then, of course, Law 3 is reserved for fire and emergency medical services. Radio traffic on these channels as we do our job. For instance, I stop Ernesto for, I don't know, what did you do, Ernesto? Something terrible.
Ran a stop sign.
So ran a stop sign, and I have to communicate to dispatch, hey, I'm stopping a car. That's important information in case there's trouble, right? Or anything else that comes up. I mean, a bad accident. It could be anything. That radio communication, that ability to communicate like this on the radio is the most important thing that 911 Center does. The problem is that this has become kind of congested. There's so much going on now that we're doing all of the things that we do on one channel. For instance, again, back to Ernesto, I ask Ernesto for a license. He gives it to me. And I go back on the same channel, ask dispatch to run his license. Now, we have onboard computers, but I don't have one, so I would do it on the dispatch channel. Everything that we do is happening on one channel, whether it be asking for a tow truck, whether it be records requests, hey, can you call so-and-so to come get the dog, whatever. That's all happening on one channel, and it's congested, both on channel 1 and channel 2. So in order to, we're looking to create a new channel. I actually worked at an agency that did this. We created what we call a service channel. And in order to create a new channel, it requires an additional person, an FTE, for the communications center. So in order to afford this employee, over the last 18 months, USU came to us and said, hey, struggling with employees. That's not the first time we've heard that. They couldn't keep their personal dispatch center employees in place. And it was becoming very difficult to keep their center up and running. So they came to us and said, hey, would you do us a favor? Would you dispatch for us from Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., and Saturday, Sunday, holidays, and even sometimes a special request. For instance, a dispatcher calls in sick. we would then take their calls for service, and that is an additional agency to the Channel 2, which is all the municipal agencies on that channel. Really, the calls for service are not that much greater, but it does add to the channel. So in order to afford this, this new person for dispatch, USU was charged a fee for the services that we provide them for dispatching, $101,000. And we obviously proposed to use some of that money to offset this new employee to create this service channel to get some of that traffic off of the main channel so that that can be used for the more emergent type situations. And so obviously I've been through this with Rich, bloody knuckles and the whole thing, but we came out at the end of the meat grinder agreeing that this would happen, and we'd of course like you folks to see the value in that as well, and keep these channels in such a way that they can do what they're intended to do. And that's safety first on our Channel 2 and Channel 1, and then all the other, just the business aspect of doing what we do, then switch over to the Channel 4 to conduct the mundane business of policing.
But that's the increase in full-time,
I'm sorry?
that's the increase in the budget, is that position? from
That
last year?
$101,000 is what we charge USU to provide services, and we would use a portion of that for hiring a new dispatch person.
How long ago, how long have we had the use of 3 channels?
I can't answer that, longer than I've been here, so at least 13 and a half years, so yeah. I don't know how to answer that question, I'm sorry.
Chief,
Yes.
I read or hear about some cities, because of defunding or other kind of things, where the response time has gone way down, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or whatever. What is our response time? I mean, within the city?
You know, generally speaking, I don't know. We do track some of the more significant calls for service. For instance, a domestic violence call. We would know that number. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we do track those kinds of things. How long it takes to get to your house to take the bicycle theft report, we don't really track that. But I'll be honest with you, Tom, we still don't. I mean, there's a lot of agencies, when I sign on duty, that there's calls waiting in the queue when I sign on duty. And when I go off duty, there's calls waiting in the queue. They never catch up. So the quality of service to their citizens suffers. But we're not there yet. We're still able to, for the most part.
There's 2 timings. One is the time from the initiation of the call to the time that an operator or dispatch picks it up. And the second is getting an officer. I was referring to the first one mostly.
Yeah, and here's the way we cheat, if I may. While dispatch is taking their call, they're entering information into what we call the CAD, computer-aided dispatch. And when that CAD is receiving information, I can see that on my computer in my car. So even though they haven't got on the radio and said, hey, Officer X, respond to this call, I'm watching it, and there's an audible signal in our car, whoop, and it shows you something's coming up. That was really the tone, by the way. And so you can see it happening. And so you're already saying, ooh, I'm on my way to that. So we kind of cheat. I know the fire department's big on this, big on call, the time the call was received, the time it was dispatched, the time they get out of the station, the time they arrive. That's big fire stuff. For us, we see it and we start responding before it's even dispatched. We'll arrive sometimes before it's even dispatched. So we kind of cheat the system a little bit, if you will. Now, that doesn't always happen, but we can do that if we're available and we're watching our in-car computer.
That's great.
So, yeah.
So Chief, the 4th channel will allow the other 3 channels to deal with the emergent situations, and the 4th channel will deal with the stuff that
Just the
comes out.
mundane stuff. Call a record, call this juvenile's mom and dad, call whatever, or run a license plate for me, or, that kind of stuff.
Will it be more difficult for the officers in the field to use multiple channels?
I've done it before. It was quite nice because, again, what you're doing is you're taking, now, one of the things that the officers will have to get used to is switching back from channel 4 to channel 1. Again, we kind of cheat there because you do have your little radio on your belt, and it's squawking in your ear, and that never comes off. That stays on the emergency channel. While you're in car when you can be doing your business and taking care of things. So there's a learning curve to it for sure.
But if Channel 1 only deals with UHP
And county.
and the county, and Channel 2 is Logan City, Smithfield, and North Logan, Hyde Park, whatever you call that, North Park, why did they switch back to Channel 1? Does it relay, I mean, they're not separate, disparate.
Well, you could be listening to all of them, so you could have it scanning all of those channels if you choose. But in order to get off the main highway, to handle the lower stuff on Channel 4, you then want to change back to Channel 1 because if something exciting is happening, that's where they're going to be talking about it on the dispatch channel. Does that make sense?
Okay, but then what is the point of Channel 2?
It's all the municipal agencies are on Channel 2. County and UHP are on Channel 1, and it's two separate channels because that's too much for one channel.
Right.
So we've already separated this once. Now all we're doing is saying, all right, Channel 1, Channel 2, if you have to run something that doesn't need to be on the emergent channel, change to Channel 4 and do your business over here, then come back into the game on 1 or 2, whichever is yours.
Okay, okay, that was my question mostly, because I was like, okay, why would Logan City change back to 1?
No, we
When they're
didn't.
really 2.
Yeah.
That's okay, sorry.
And are these digital channels, or do we have to also pay frequency usage and stuff like that?
That's all wrapped up in what dispatch does, yes. There's all kinds of things that we're paying fees for and that kind of thing.
And one more question, several years ago, there was allocation of money or the beginning of saving money for a statewide channel radio system.
So I'm so proud of this. We are so ready for this. It's happening right now.
Okay,
It's switching over right now. The contract was awarded about a year and a half ago. They started in St. George and came north, which was perfect, by the way, because then they got to learn all that they needed to learn on their way to Logan.
right.
And that is actually happening right now. We've already changed all of our radios in car and on our belt. We're ready to go. It's P25 compliant. And we are there.
Okay.
And we have been putting money away for this event
For like
for
5
what,
or 6
Rich?
years.
8 or 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, every year we've been stockpiling money, and we've done it already. We're there.
So that doesn't affect any of this though?
All it makes us is user-friendly to all the radio frequencies that the state is putting in place and the towers that support us in our radio chatter.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, so for 13 and a half years, I've served as the chief of police in Logan. And, I've described my budget every year as a budget that is very generous. And like I say, in my slide here, it seems a little risky to talk like that when I'm sitting here before you wanting to tout, I need this and I need that. Honestly, you guys, I don't need this and I don't need that. We have a very capable budget. Gratefully, this year, we've had a little bit more autonomy in how to allocate funds. So if I need a little bit more to do my TASER rollover, well, I've been put in charge now of that, and we can do that. Or some of the other things that may need some help might be travel and training. It might be fuel if fuel goes up. We'll have that money. We can kind of massage this and make our budget work a little bit better for each other instead of having to constantly be rifling through the budget trying to find those 3 shiny nickels that you lost under the couch cushion to pay the bills, you know, and it's never quite that bad. But this year has been exciting because we've been put in charge of being able to utilize that money a little bit more purposeful. And Rich said it best when he said that, you know, he doesn't know how my individual accounts are going. He doesn't know necessarily that I need tires. I know that. He doesn't know that. So he's put me in charge of buying my own tires if I need to buy my own tires. And so I just want you guys to know I appreciate, I've worked for a couple of different cities. I've seen how councils, I've seen how mayors, I've seen how city managers work. This has been a wonderful experience because this is a good group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you know, although it's been flatlining for the most part for the last several years, since I've been here, we've done a little bit of work on getting a little bit extra money for software maintenance, taser replacement over the years, but it's remained relatively flat through the years. And the reason that I can talk like that is because it was a budget. We did okay. We were able to massage it and get through the year and still have a little left over, so it worked out just great. But this year, kind of exciting. I've been talking to the mayor and talking to Rich and even HR. We too would like to increase our number by 1. And the reason for this is kind of a hybridized idea. And what I mean by that is I would like an extra police officer, sworn police officer, to do 2 different things. Work police and work front desk area. One of the things that's happening is our necessity for grandma has gone up dramatically. That in and of itself, we've been able to kind of take on the extra work and do what needs to be done. But the legislature mandated here a year ago and actually refined it this year that instead of, if I want to expunge my record, if I've been arrested and I want to expunge my record, I would have to pay fees and go file an expungement. Now the legislature has created what's called an automatic criminal expungement. So now expungements are coming to us automatically, and the workload in going through an expungement is very, very similar to a grandma request because I could be the third party in a arrest situation. So my clerks have to go through and completely whitewash all the reports and all the evidence documents of my name because now I'm expunged, right? It's huge. And so that's put another unfunded mandate that we now have to do. Similarly, our calls for service haven't gone up greatly, but the types of calls for service have. And so we're doing a lot more with the same amount of people. I think that this position, if allowed to help not only manage and supervise the front desk area, but help in those 2 areas with the front desk, but also be the walk-in officer, people that come to the window that need police services, there that person is. If the phone rings and says, hey, I want to report my child missing, okay, that person can handle that right there. And the beauty of this thing is we keep our officers out of the building and on the road and doing what they do, because every time one of them comes into the office, they have to do this, they have to do that, and it's an hour and a half before they get back out on the road. This will help us do more with less, I think, if we use this kind of hybridized position. And so, again, I can't shock your conscience with this cool revenue stream that I'm going to talk to you about that is going to afford that. But it is part of our budget allocation this year that we've talked to Rich and the mayor about, and they seem to support that. So similarly, what I'd love is to have your support as you take the budget forward in hiring this new position as well.
I have a question for you, Chief.
Yes.
That if you can think through some of your resources and assets, would you say any given percentage that you can think of is available in Spanish?
Now, what do you mean by resources?
Yes, yeah. So things that people can access online, communications, things like that?
We always have language ability, not just Spanish, all languages, believe it or not. We pay for a service. So our 911 center, I don't care what your language is, as long as we can figure out what your language is. You know, we got to figure out what language we're speaking, and even that, the language light can help us with. So we're constantly able to do that. I've already talked to you about how we deploy. Every shift has multiple Spanish speakers on the ship, so we've always got Spanish speakers. You're talking about information on the internet or in pamphlet format,
Yes.
those kinds of things. We do seek pamphlet format issues in Spanish. I don't think we're there yet, but it wouldn't be a bad idea, and I don't mind sharing that idea with the administrative staff, that maybe getting on the internet with some of our information would be helpful in Spanish additionally.
Yeah. Do you ever budget for any of that type of project?
We haven't in the past, but it doesn't mean we couldn't, right? What we do have is people, not only police officers, but other staff that are Spanish speakers. Now, I learned a valuable lesson from you the other day, and that is, just because I think I speak Spanish doesn't mean I speak Spanish, right? Or maybe I don't understand exactly what I'm saying and how it is received by somebody that really does speak Spanish. So even that's kind of a little bit of a worry for me, would be, are we getting the right person to translate and get the information out there in a way that, first of all, we look good, and second of all, the message can be received well. So,
I've expressed kind of advocating that we prioritize safety as far as kind of like the topic. So specifically talking about the police department, the fire department, and any other department that potentially has a safety component of what they communicate, to prioritize some of those things, to have them also available, at least in Spanish. I mean, I know it takes resources to make it happen. And one of the conversations that we had, somebody mentioned that it'd be great to at least come up with a priority of what types of communications need or would be good to have in Spanish. Do you feel like in your team you can identify those by yourselves, or do you feel like you would need some assistance?
like a third-party group to come in and say, here's what we would
Either a
like.
third-party group, or maybe organizing a small committee that could help offer some guidance.
Let me make that suggestion. I'm kind of a lame duck right now, but not to the point that I can't take this idea forward and make sure that my staff understand that it's a priority for you, and not just you, but the Spanish community needs that kind of outreach.
I really think so. And last Friday at the Cinco de Mayo Festival, interestingly enough, County Executive David Zook, his speech was largely about wanting the Hispanic community to feel safe, to feel like they can come forward anytime without fear of any type of something against them, or because they were undocumented or not. But I personally feel like an easy improvement would be to have some of the information available so that if they seek it, it's there. But yeah, that's where I'm going with that.
I will pass that on and ask that to be prioritized through the coming year. Is that a fair solution?
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to hustle. I'm going to skip this slide, and this is just me saying again, here's what we're trying to do. We're splitting it up. We're using part of it for our full-time employee, fuel costs, whatever things that come along, and then having some raises that the mayor has put forward as well. End slide. Thanks for a great time at Logan, and If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Perfect. No question. I didn't give you any time.
No extra questions.
Thank you.
We asked them all during it.
Yeah.
We're good at interrupting.
No, that was fun. I don't mind that at all.
All kinds of
Thank you.
questions.
And thanks for your service to the city as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just thank you.
I didn't make 10 minutes either, so. All in trouble. Yeah. Have a great night, you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, you don't think people are going to rush the budget hearing
I
meeting?
don't. In fact, I'm banking on it.
I don't know, Mike might have some like controversial topic that,
No, mine's really easy. He took all my time, so I'll go through mine quick. Mine's all pictures, so no fluff, or no substance, just
No
fluff.
substance, just fluff.
So obviously, we're Community Development Fund 130 in the general fund. You've got all the budget details in your documents. Our total budget in Comm Dev is just under 2.4 million. And then CDG, obviously you're aware of, we anticipate 567,134 this year. We've got 15 full-time employees, 3 part-time employees. We are broken into, or divided into 4 different divisions. At admin, so we've got 2 full-time, 1 part-time, and this is how they're paid out of, but they generally some will work in different areas within our department. And we've set up some goals for each of our groups this year, and we're in the process of converting our records from paper to electronic, trying to purge our vast areas. We've got a filing cabinets, and do a little bit of remodeling inside to make some better office space. We're always working on training, cross-training. Our front counter coverage is always sketchy, or skeptical, or it's challenging sometimes, but kind of to Ernesto's point earlier, we do have 4 staff members who are bilingual, so that's very helpful within us. We also go over to UB and help a little bit there once in a while, so it's been really helpful for all of us. And we're working on cross-training our part-time people to kind of cover or backfill when we have full-time people that are gone. So trying to learn skills in building, business licensing, code enforcement, things like that. Building safety, we've got 5 employees there. They obviously do permitting, inspection services, some of the big projects that come through over the last year or two. It's interesting when we look at the numbers in that program. Construction values are up just through April. They're up over the previous years. We still got 2 more months to go, but that's probably just a reflection of the fact that costs have gone up. As far as permitting goes for residential uses, our numbers are down. We do have about 500 units, give or take, that are in a variety of stages of permitting, so those will come online here over the next year. But the trend is obviously down. Permitting is down. Housing is down. Multifamily housing, the demand is still there. But I think eventually that's going to slow down as well. Our guys put out about 1,000 permits a year, do about 2,000 inspections, and then do about 500 plan reviews. So the goals we've got for our building division, we've got 2 inspectors that are on staff. They're relatively new, within a year or so. And I think as the department heads, one of the challenges we all face is when you have staff turnover. It's really costly, it's expensive, it's time consuming, and people will go look for the best job and most money or whatever it is, but we spend a lot of time and money training new people to get on board. And so we've got 2 inspectors that are almost fully certified, both residential and commercial. Hopefully by the end of this budget year, they'll be done with that. But it's time consuming. They've got to do a lot of study and a lot of prep and a lot of test taking. So the other thing we're working on is we've been working towards online e-submittals and building, trying to get where people can get on through our system. It's a struggle. And then trying to improve our inspection request system. Right now they call in, have to talk to a body or leave a message. We're trying to figure out a way to do that, like through a text message or a text through a computer or something like that. It'll make it easier for everybody.
can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
So I know with the fire, we've had discussions the last couple of meetings about the number of times they have to get called out for inspection and wanting to charge for that. Can you just educate me a little bit on our building inspectors? Like if someone comes out and they don't pass inspection and they come back and they don't pass inspection and then they finally do, what's the revenue stream, or is there a revenue stream on your
Yeah,
end?
we generally, well, in fact, we met with fire today to talk about how we're going to assess those fees, where they get assessed in the process, at the building stage or at the business licensing stage. For our guys, it's kind of built in that they'll go out and do a number of inspections, but it gets to the point where I've gone out to you, I've given you a correction notice of 15 items, I come back, when you call me, yet 12 of them are still not done. I'll give you one more chance. I come back, 9 of them aren't done, and at some point we'll say, okay, you're going to pay a reinspection fee of $50 or $100 just to make it, you to understand that it's serious. But a lot of big projects, because everything is kind of staged based on the trade that's working, so our guys will have to be out doing a partial plumbing or electrical inspection here before they sheetrock, but then they'll have to come back and do the next section, the next section, the next section. So on the big projects, they spend a lot of time out there, kind of inspecting the same thing, but in different facets of the building. And those we don't, charge separately for.
Okay.
So we just hope it's built into the cost of doing business up front.
But if it's not, you're going to come back with the same sort of fees that the fire people did?
No, I don't think so. We're trying to figure out a way that we can consolidate our inspections with the fires, because our inspectors will look at some of the same issues as the fire guys will, but they use that inspection like on a new project or a new restaurant. They then set that up in their system, which then kind of lays out their future responsibility from a fire perspective. We just look at it from a building perspective, whether it meets code, they're good to go with ingress, egress, things like that, and then we're done on the next project. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can capitalize on, instead of 2 guys out there, having 1 guy out there, but we're kind of talking that through to see if we can't save some money doing it that way.
Okay. Amy channeled my question. That's what I was going to ask. I was like, oh, shoot.
I had a good one, you stole it.
No. I was like, oh, we're both thinking alike.
Okay, our next group is neighborhood improvement. This is one that Aaron Smith runs. They do code enforcement, business licensing, neighborhood stuff, public arts stuff. And this one, you guys probably get some feedback on. We do a lot of licensing every year, a lot of complaints. Sometimes we don't do enough complaint management, but there are a lot of complaints. And one thing we've gone with is our business license and landlord licensing renewals are all online. We're pushed in the direction to try to get all of our other licensing online too, to make it a little bit simpler for everybody. There are some nuances to that we have to work through.
Is that Tom's sidewalk?
I designed that.
That's your sidewalk with all the snow on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
It was Tom's sidewalk
So-
2 weeks
The
ago.
houses are quick.
When we have the complaints and the complaints become
2 weeks ago.
a fine, does that fine, does all that money come back into the department?
No, it goes back to the general fund. But, I mean,
There's not
indirectly,
that
they pay
much.
salaries and stuff.
The amount they collect is about
Yeah.
$200,000 less than they spend, so they've got nothing to complain about.
Well, no, but I'm just, we've got the fire department who charges fees and they want to hire a person for
Balance
that.
your budget election.
I'm not asking the question.
Sorry, what's that?
So we've got the fire department that wants to charge fees to hire a person. You've got Mike who's saying they sort of get enough fees to pay for the people that have to do all the work.
We don't, no.
No.
So here's the thing.
And then you've got the complaints that generate fees, but they go somewhere else.
So we divide the community development department into several different categories. As far as building is concerned and everything we can allocate to building, right at this moment, we're collecting more revenue than we have expenses, which is not a good thing from the state's perspective. That's a problem. But it's not typically the issue. Typically, we're about $1 million below what we're bringing in. As far as business licensing is concerned, we subsidize that. There's no question. As far as planning is concerned, we subsidize that heavily. And what's your other category? Building permits is part of the.
Yeah.
Is there another category?
Administration.
Administration just kind of bleeds into all of them. So maybe it's just those 3.
Yeah, code enforcement's not a moneymaker by any means.
Well, no, I just didn't know whether the money came back to code enforcement.
So it's kind of like I tell my kids, because they want me to pay them to do whatever's going on in the house. It's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll pay you $100. Now you can give that back to me for the $10,000 that you owe me for the last 7 months of your lives.
I know, but that's not the way,
But okay, here, let me give you
But
another.
it's not how this Anderson household ran.
Let me-
How about you, Mark?
Yes, exactly.
So a lot of departments want to take the little money they're getting above and beyond what might be the average and add it to their budget, but the problem is we still have to pay for everything that we already do. And so I haven't figured out a good way of getting there.
so Mike's department, sorry, Mike, I'm making it take too long.
No.
But Mike's department is general fund. Fire, for example, is general fund.
Yes.
But they charge fees for things
Yes.
that do or do not
I see your point.
support the people that are working, or can they adjust fees if they are overloaded?
Okay.
And the way fire has said they're going to create fees
Yes.
because they're overloaded.
So let me explain this. Okay, what we've kind of established is an existing fee. If you're adjusting the existing fee for the cost of living, that fee is already incorporated within the budget. The cost of living is the raises we received this year, last year, the previous year. If you create a new fee, that is new funding, is kind of the way we looked at it. So the fees that Mike is currently charging are all existing fees that support existing services. The fee that fire is charging they really are additional fees. And the thought is that those will support additional people in the future.
And none of what we do is really fee for service other than building. And building is a culmination of a long process where you kind of recapture some of those planning fees. You know, we charge an application fee for a conditional use permit, and it takes hours to do that, but it takes a lot of different people that spend hours on it. So a lot of departments weigh in on it, PC, whoever else. So we don't do a fee for service necessarily. And the fines we collect are minimal. But you know, they got to cover, we have a hearing examiner occasionally, we have to go to court occasionally. They cover all the back end stuff. So the intent of when you have a penalty fee is you're trying to make somebody change behavior. Look, it's going to cost you $50 or $75 or $500, whatever it is. Hopefully you don't do it again. Hopefully you shovel your walk, things like that. But it's in the societal good to have those things, and so citizens Logan will help pay that cost because we all think it's a good thing to do.
Okay.
Now, as far as like plan review, we do set aside a certain amount in the budget for plan review, and Mike occasionally has to send those out. But if we get a gigantic project that was not anticipated, and those plan review fees are higher than we anticipated, so are his expenses, then we will allow that budget to go up. But the problem is, everybody wants to kind of take their little money that they are collecting above and what they think is above and beyond, and use it to buy their department a special dessert. The problem is they have to pay for dinner. And we do that all collectively. And the general fund is a giant, like the chief said earlier, it's a trough. And so we have to try to measure out who gets what. Now, we think we have a fairly or a generally fair policy, but where there are exceptions, we will address those. Try to.
Okay, I have one more question.
Is this my time or Rich's time?
So when Aaron took over the Public Art Committee, that was originally something that was either in the council budget or the mayor budget, or, you know, somewhere we did some public art stuff. Did we just add that on to Aaron's job, or did we somehow add budget to that role to compensate for the additional responsibilities?
So you're saying, are we paying him more?
No, I'm saying,
Is it all coming out of community development?
Well, we have-
Or
what I'm saying is, okay, so it's Joe, he makes $25,000. And right now he does 1, 2, 3 things. Well, now we've added a 4th thing, which he has time to do, but we feel like because it's an additional thing, he deserves $30,000 for that job. So Where is that five, I mean, because we've added it, we've said public art is important, we've said we want to have a public art committee, we want to have, you know, jury selections and all that kind of stuff. Have we created funding to
pay him more?
to make that happen?
To pay him more, is what you said.
Well, or to pay for all the other stuff, the buckets and the, you know,
All
the stuff,
the
Home
other
Depot
stuff we
and-
definitely, all the other stuff we fund.
But there's two things going on there. One is we've had a fine arts, kind of a budget allotment for that.
Yeah.
And that was done through a group, I think Teresa and the mayor and kind of
Yeah.
other folks sat on.
Yeah.
And that was done independently. The public art program was something that we took on as a department because we thought it was kind of cool and fun, and it was just absorbed into Aaron's job duties because he has an art background. So it could have been me, it wouldn't have been as artsy, but Aaron was the one who wanted to do it. So no, he didn't make more because he's doing that.
Well,
But it does beg the question about, do we as a city do we value public art, and should we set up an additional budget item for future public art items? And that's independent of the person, that's more a product. Basically, we want to buy more public art throughout the city, and that's a discussion, you know, obviously this body should have, but independent of what Aaron does as a manager of that program.
okay, but if Aaron needed someone to help him,
Yeah, I mean, if that's,
Then we're in trouble. The budget.
We prioritize that along with all the other needs we have as a city.
Okay.
That's what we do.
all right.
But let me just say, if it's supplies and we add a new program, yes, we fund that. But I would be super duper, incredibly, outrageously cautious about saying because we add more duties or more assignments or more things to somebody, that we have to add more salary. Because if they can accomplish both, then the counter argument is we're overpaying them when they weren't doing it.
I know.
In addition, during the year, every year, we'll have legislative responsibilities that are tacked on to somebody, including HR during COVID. We didn't pay our HR department more money. Likewise, when certain things go away, like we no longer have to track X, Y, or Z, we don't pay them less. And so I'd be super duper careful. Clearly, if we're changing somebody's job description and they're now becoming a manager, just to keep them happy, we have to reevaluate those things. But just because we add extra duties, please be super careful because we do that every single day
Well, it wasn't.
in every single department.
My question wasn't related particularly to salary. It was related more to
Stuff.
what Mike was talking about, like, did he get budget for
We do have
This, in the
a
park.
slightly increased line item for that. The other thing is, the raises are all considered pay for performance. So if we have an employee that we feel is performing to the level that they deserve a raise, I mean, again, managers decide. Some people may not get a raise if they feel their performance is not adequate.
Okay.
So that pay for performance really can account for that, but managers, department heads need to use that. So.
Okay, I just didn't want us to be throwing more at community development as a council
Yeah.
and not giving them, or
Yeah.
police or whoever,
Funds for what they need.
And is
funds for what they need.
Is the public art budget under is community promotions?
Yeah,
That
it's
mayor's
community.
budget, community promotions. So we did increase that amount a little bit. Again, one thing we'll try and do is go for grants and so on. I mean, to me, it's a wonderful program and I'm excited about it, but
Yeah.
it's kind of a nicety. So again, it's pretty exciting. We just got some donations for additional art for the library plaza from a donor.
Oh, good.
And then we're looking at another one. So again, I think that's a source where we can apply for grants.
Well, and people in the community can participate.
Right.
So-
We've got a little bit of kind of seed money and to do some things we want, but again, I think we kind of need to be cautious when we, with all the needs for water tanks and streets and,
Oh, yeah.
everything.
I know.
So,
well, then from my perspective as the department manager, I have to figure out what's the priority within our department based on you all, the mayor, and then we have to shift priorities and shift job duties. So it's not like you know, when we took this on, he wasn't just sitting there waiting for stuff to do. He was doing things, and we said, well, this is going to become a priority. Let's figure out how to absorb it. Maybe some of the other things become less priority. So,
Right.
but it really comes back to is there money budgeted for public art things as opposed to, you know, him individually.
People, yeah. I wasn't talking about him.
I
Just,
don't want to play my time.
No, and we need to make sure Aaron knows he's not getting a raise.
I know.
no. This is on
And then it's
Facebook.
Teresa's fault that he's not.
I know, you told me he was getting a giant raise.
This is on Facebook.
Okay.
Okay.
Look, and he's doing more with, so let him show you the data on how he's doing more.
I just wanted to hit the code enforcement summaries. You should see this in the monthly report that comes out. I think quarterly he provides code enforcement stats. So our numbers are up. And I think it's a reflection of the fact that our 2 inspectors are better trained, who do the job more efficient. So that's a good thing. And then also just this shows you, this is in the last report that just shows you, it just shows the distribution of cases citywide. It's just kind of interesting to look at. So their goals as a group to continue the training and certifications for their inspectors. We want to improve our public outreach, really as it relates to code enforcement, you know, dual language. How do we reach out to the Spanish-speaking population with information? The nice thing is we have probably 25% of our staff is bilingual, so that's very helpful. And one of our code inspectors is bilingual, so that's really helpful too. One of our tasks this year is to update some of our antiquated business licensing codes. I mean, some of that stuff is really old, so we're going to try to go through and correct that. And then also continue our shift toward more online applications and licensing. Next group is planning. This is who you deal with the most, Russ and Tanya, 2 and 1. Obviously, development review, permitting, long-range plans, neighborhood plans. They do probably 75 different project reviews each year, and it just varies year to year. So really the goals for this group, for at least the 2 of them, we're underway with the Wilson neighborhood plan. Our plan is to start the Ellis neighborhood plan sometime later in this year. We need to redo our historic district survey update. We thought we had some grant money for that, but I think that's going to be diverted to the Main Street Bridge when they do the tunnel project, so we'll see about getting a different grant. We've got moderate income housing plan. We'll do progress reporting, so you'll see some of that stuff coming up. Then our bike ped plan is coming to the 10-year mark, so we probably ought to be thinking about refreshing that.
Where's the general plan fitting in all this?
Just be patient.
Thank you.
Right there.
There we go.
So this is really what we're working towards to start in 2024. We've been doing projects leading up to it, our annexation plan, moderate income housing plan, existing conditions report will be done this year. We've done part of the vacant lands analysis, but that'll get a little more robust with the conditions report. We're going to put together a public participation plan or strategy for the update project later in this year, first of next year, and then we'll start putting together an advisory committee early next year. So the cost of this is really up in the air. I'm predicting it's about $250,000. It just depends on the market, you know, where the economy's at. So we've set aside $50,000 in last fiscal year. We're going to set aside another $50,000 in this current year that we're in. And then in the fiscal 24, we should be able to set aside another $50,000 and plus up to $100,000. So based on that increased funding we have, we'll probably push most of that towards this project. And then to close it out in fiscal year 25, we should be able to use our professional and technical of $50,000. That should give us enough. And we're going after a CIB grant. Hopefully either this fall or in January, and they seem really optimistic that we'll get a planning grant. One of the stumbling blocks too is we've got to have some refined cost estimates, and I really don't know what the cost is, so I can do an RFP and get cost back. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that and still qualify to get a grant. But when I talked to Brian Carver, they're like, oh yeah, they've got money, they're willing to throw $100,000 at you to do a planning project. So that'll be really cool.
So there was a report that we were supposed to fill out if we wanted to apply for CIB funds, and I didn't think we did, so.
Yeah, it's got to be done
Filling that
this
out.
month. It's got to be done by July 1st, but I've talked to Bear River or Bragg about that, and again, I'm waiting for the answer back from CIB on how to do the cost estimates. So they need to know by the end of June, preferably sooner, but whether or not you're going to go after any funding. So,
Okay, good.
and I think this will take about 24 months to do, give or take, kind of
What does
depends on.
CIB stand for?
Community Impact Board.
Community Impact Board, yeah. Generally, it's the counties or jurisdictions that have resource extraction. They usually get priority, oil, coal, things like that, but they do have funding available for other communities to do planning work, so.
We got some on the water treatment plant, right? We have some CIB funding.
Yeah. So that's our big one coming up, and that'll take a lot of time, a lot of energy, and so we'll start kind of plugging that together here over the next year.
But you will anticipate having an outside,
That's the
Team?
plan, yeah,
Okay.
is to hire an outside consultant. So we'll do an RFP sometime next spring, late winter, early spring, see what we get back and see what the costs are going to be.
okay.
But we're trying to do as much upfront work as we can, kind of to front load it so that the costs aren't as high. Finally, you got CDBG. You'll see them again, or Amanda, in a week or so. This is one of the projects that we're working towards. And in terms of community development block grant, we've got an RFP out now for a consultant to do our con plan 2024 through 2028. And then next year's annual action plan, and an update to impediments for housing. So all those need to be done by next May. And then based on the cost, we may scale back and not do like the annual action plan, we'll do it ourselves. But we need to get the con plan done. And we think we've got about 40,000 of some funds that we'll throw at that, so. And just a reminder, we put this report out. It's always a good source of info and questions. Gene?
With the increased enforcement, are we making progress on the violations?
How do you define progress?
Well, we should have fewer people over occupying because of our enforcement. We're spending a lot of
I
time.
think there are always new ones.
Yeah. How do you know, again?
Well, and the challenge in the transient community where you've got a lot of turnover that's semester based, you're always educating a new set of people coming in versus that are leaving. And so you're always going to be behind the curve. And so really it's about try to get the egregious ones, try to get some corrective behavior. But again, you're going to deal with new people in a semester or two.
So by the time you enforce it, they move on to the next thing and then new people come
About
in.
how many landlords do you think we have in the community? And what percentage do we think are licensed?
We've got about 1,600 that are licensed, but the way we license one landlord, they may have multiple properties. So we don't license per property necessarily, we license per individual or corporation or LLC who has multiples.
And we have 1,600, what, do you think that's 90% of them? 50% of them?
Good question, I don't know. I could guess, but I don't know if I'd even be close.
Okay. Is there a way that we can get more compliance for that?
We can, and so generally how we find out about it is a lot of the stuff that's not licensed are, grandma renting their basement out, or somebody moves out of their house and decides to rent their house. They, in theory, require a landlord license. So there's a lot of that element to it. Generally, the bigger projects, the larger landlords with larger holdings are generally licensed.
Yeah.
The challenge with them is some people have 200 units or 200 projects. They buy and sell stuff, kind of like you buy milk at the grocery store. And so they never think about, I got to update my license. And so every year we kind of have to scramble and go back through to verify that those are there. I mean, we probably have an 85% compliance from a landlord licensing perspective. And there's probably that 15% that you just are going to be hard to capture because it's those really small ones. You didn't even know that they rented out.
Okay. And those are the ones, then there'll be a percentage of those that are the over-occupied people, too.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can assign, a relationship between whether you have a license or not and over occupancy. I think it's it's people are going to do what they're going to do regardless of whether they're licensed or not. And in some cases, we see, an owner may not realize that they're overoccupied because their tenants sublease to other kids, and it's because you have kids, right? That they're of that age and want to live together and split the rent. And there are some who knowingly violate it. And occupancy is really a challenge to prove because we don't have the ability to just knock a door down and go check. We try to do it through willing compliance. And if we can get somebody to say, yeah, come in and look, it's counting beds, counting toothbrushes, things like that. But it's and really the way we find out is complaints that why is there 18 cars parked there every day for the last month?
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
I will say the USU's website
I have 3 toothbrushes, by the
for
way.
student rentals is much improved over the last couple of years with information about Logan's code and that we do have an occupancy limit. And so I will say I'm appreciative that they're trying to do their part, that if a student has a question about housing in Logan, that they're reflecting our regulations and what compliance is. It doesn't mean that they follow it, but the information is there now at least.
So one thing that's going to come to you guys here in the next few months, we have all these goals and objectives and ideas in our moderate income housing. How do you provide more housing readily available, affordable, things like that? And occupancy load is one of those challenging, tough things. If you increase the occupant load from 3 to 4, you increase the supply of housing 25%, right? I mean, it's just bam, here it is overnight. Or if you redefine a family plus 1 or a family plus 2, then you provide more housing. There's a lot of, it's very nuanced. So, but we're going to at least throw it out there and we'll see what happens, and it's going to cause a lot of angst for all of us. But at least we're trying our part.
So you asked about how do you measure, another one would be, I think we have like 56% owner occupied, or is it this inverse of that?
It's less than that now.
Yeah.
It's less.
It's slowly declining. I think it's like,
We're definitely under 50.
yeah, we're under 50. I'm going to say
48, I
it's
think.
46%, 45%.
So we're losing on that one. Okay.
But that's a hard statistic because some neighborhoods in Hillcrest, for example, it's probably 90% give or take owner occupied, whereas some of the other areas aren't that robust. So it's not, when you apply it citywide, it's a little bit of a disservice to say, well, this is what we are citywide, when in fact you look at some of these core neighborhoods, Cliffside, Hillcrest.
Woodruff is like 81%.
Yeah, Woodruff, right. So there are some areas, but then we have large concentrations of rental units in Bridger, we're getting on the south end. It's just a function of the economy, you need these units, but that does skew that statistic.
Does that include, just my own edification, the large multifamily units, or does it exclude those?
No, it includes everything, all units.
So when we add 400 apartments, our rental rate's going
Right.
to, percentage of rentals is going to go up.
And we've got the numbers, in the last plan we did, we've got it broken out by structure type, so you can look at that statistic as it applies only to like a single-family dwelling or an attached dwelling like a townhome. And obviously, the numbers are different. When you apply it citywide, it's a lower number.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. I have 3 toothbrushes, by the way, so.
What's that?
I have 3 toothbrushes, by the way, so we're counting toothbrushes.
Can you go back?
Mark counts for 3.
I'm in the right train of plane, so I guess I have 2.
You gotta have your travel one, you gotta have the one that you use, and you always gotta have an extra, so.
But are they all out in the cup on the counter?
No,
There you go.
no, I keep them in the drawer, so.
We don't look at drawers.
He has 3 toothbrushes.
Do you use them?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
My God, it's so helpful. Thank you
I'm
so
traveling a
much.
lot, so I have my travel brush and my home brush and
Thank you, Mike.
extra.
Thank you.
We're counting toothbrushes.
The other people sitting over there are going, oh, man, it's going to go
It's
on.
gonna last tonight.
Mine took 45 minutes.
I know, it's true.
A lot of obscure questions.
Isn't it better that we ask questions than we just accept what you're throwing at us?
Well, you're going to talk about
Mark, do you even
lots.
brush your teeth? I guess that's.
How can you say that to a guy dressed like this?
That's right, the sloppy one just walked out.
Yeah.
But look, even Rich George didn't put on a tie tonight, so, you know. Workshops are more casual, right? We can,
Mark doesn't come very often, so he has to show up in a suit.
What's without a suit? I got a lot of grief, so I hardly dare not wear one now. I'm coming like that next time.
Yeah.
For the real budget hearing?
Yeah. This is just kind of a look back at our overall budgets for the last few years, and you can see a significant jump for this year's budget, and I'll bet none of you can guess what that's from.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the lion's share, in fact, almost all of it can be attributed to increased costs in purchasing power. Went from 23.8 million to 31.6 million. And we also have increased our budget again for the second year quite a bit in our natural gas fuel because we anticipate running those turbines to offset high costs of power in this kind of high load hour months.
And those are the ones that are down?
At Sauk, yeah, at third west, third south.
Okay.
They have the natural gas turbines. So that's an increase of 9.4 million. And there's kind of three ways we can offset that. One is a rate increase, which is certainly under consideration. One is continued surcharges, or maybe a combination of those two things. So when I entered the budget in, I talked with Rich a lot about this, and he kind of entered this number into the notes. Maybe you can explain that better than I can. As a line item, just saying that, hey, we're going to have to recoup this with surcharges or an upcoming rate increase.
So here's our problem, and I think we've communicated this a little bit, but the surcharge is based on the difference between the budget and actual. Well,
Now-
we kept going back and forth trying to figure out, but how do we budget for what we need to buy if we don't include it in the budget? So what we've done, and I'll try to find the page number.
86.
What?
86.
Look at you.
So page 86, you can just see that it's written into the notes, even though those notes don't add up to what's the line item for that detail. We just said part of this includes surcharges we have 9.8 in the budget document. And so what we're going to do is to calculate the surcharge until the point where we have a rate that doesn't need a surcharge, is we will subtract the anticipated surcharge out to get the budgeted number and then compare that with what our actual cost is for power. Does that make sense?
Can you say that one more time?
I'm not sure I can. So we're going to take the total budget for power, let's say it's 20, let's say it's
36
million. How much budget?
30 million.
30 million.
Let's see, right there.
We'll subtract out the surcharge to get down to what the budgeted amount is for power. And the difference between what the budgeted amount, less the surcharge, and actual will be the calculated surcharge, if any. I know, this is...
You're going to subtract the surcharge and then calculate the
I
surcharge?
know, it's a circular reference. That's why it took us 3 hours to come up with this.
Because you can't really, if you put it all in there, then there's no ability
And
to
there's
do
no
a
surcharge.
surcharge. And because we don't have a contract for
And I
that
don't
power,
have
we don't
revenue to cover
truly
it.
really know what
What the
that power's
cost is
gonna
gonna
cost
be.
us. So you can budget, I think, what your contractual things are, but budgeting what you expect might be, I think that's legitimate, that we budget for what we're contracted, but that squiggly area where we're not sure if it's gonna be this cost or that cost, that's what that surcharge line is.
We were stuck between a rock and another rock. On the one hand, we wanted to bring a realistic budget. On the other hand, we need to calculate a surcharge because our rate won't support the realistic budget. So this was our compromise. We brought a realistic budget with this line item that is the surcharge. When you subtract that out, that gives us what our budget for power is. Our budget for power compared to the actual will give us the surcharge.
And,
I'm not sure that was any better.
That makes sense
It
to
was
me.
better.
well, we can be grateful that we have this surcharge in place because there are lots of cities that didn't, and they were bleeding their reserves to cover because they had no way to recover it from customers, so.
Yeah, I talked to other cities. Since we're on Facebook, I won't insult them, but I talked to other cities who are in the position we were in
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 2008?
2002.
Oh, 2002.
2002 when or 2004 Enron crisis.
Yeah.
And they're going through the exact issues we went through back then, which is, oh, is this just a blurb? Should we raise our rates? Should we put in a temporary something in place? And the council is trying to have this rapid re-education to figure out what to do. And most of them are just kind of punting, saying, well, we'll figure that out later. Meantime, they're bleeding millions of dollars per month.
Millions.
And we would be bleeding millions of dollars. Our reserve, back when you looked at it, would just be gone.
Yep.
Which is what happened in 2004-ish, 8.
Luckily, it was before I was here and didn't have to suffer that stress. I just noted here that increased power purchase will be covered with rate increases or surcharges, and then this is what we just talked about, the line item of 9 million in the budget, just to kind of note it and document it.
So you are doing a rate study? right now?
I'm doing a rate study. I'm not to that slide yet, Jeannie.
Okay.
We'll talk about it. So cost of service analysis being done now. I reached out to the consultant that's doing it. He tried to call me today, left a message, said, oh, sorry, I need to get a hold of you, but I don't have time now, I'll call you later. And I haven't heard back from him, but he told me he would have it the first part of May, which is where we're at. So I hope to hear from him maybe tomorrow and find out that he's getting closer on that, so.
What is the expectation?
I anticipate, so our surcharges have accounted for about 40% more per kilowatt hour charges passed on to the customer. Now you can't say we're going to do a 42% rate increase to cover that, because there's demand charges and fixed fee costs, customer service charges, and so it lowers that percentage. And then the other thing that we have to weigh is, are we kind of in a blip in the power markets, and do we want to jump clear to a big rate and then we're bringing in too much revenue and our power costs have dropped, or do we kind of shoot a little bit higher, bring our rates up, but then still rely on the surcharges to keep us whole, but hopefully the markets, and I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball for that. So we may just have to make maybe an educated guess and a slight rate increase. I won't say slight, because 42% is a lot, but we may have to make a less than 42% rate increase to get there, but then hold that and let the surcharges keep us whole, and hope the power markets maybe stabilize a little bit, more resources come to fruition.
How does that surcharge work? Does that come as a line item on the bill for each customer?
Well, it's passed on directly as a per kilowatt hour charge to all customer classes, so residential,
So
commercial.
they might catch a big
So
bill.
if you look at your bill, normally your residential rate starts at 9 cents per kilowatt hour in the first tier, and in the bill, you'll be being charged 12 cents per kilowatt hour in the first tier, and you know that everything above 9 cents, but it's not very, I think the billing software has limitations to carve that out and show it.
We had some difficulty in how to present this. Anyway, the way it's presented is just the one line item for your power cost. And then at the bottom, we include a note that says the surcharge for this month for electricity was 1.4 cents per megawatt or whatever, or per kilowatt hour. Sorry.
Kilowatt hour, not megawatt hour.
In which case So we just disclose it at the bottom of the bill. People have to look. And we fielded quite a few calls, but I'm super impressed with how patient our public has been. I think they realize what's going on, and that we're pretty fortunate.
And our large industrial customers have been very patient too. I mean, they've seen, $100,000, $200,000 increases in their bills, but they get it, right? Because they're seeing the same increased cost for natural gas that we are to generate power, so they have been good.
So if the public, the citizens wanted to have an actual line item disclosing the actual surcharge amount, is that possible?
It is possible. It's just excruciatingly difficult.
Unlikely.
Yeah, in order to do that, so we have 30,000 bills roughly that we're sending out. There's no way to add there's no efficient way to add, what we'd have to do is add a new rate to every one of those bills and link it to the proper meter. And there's no way to automate that well. And the place that we're using within our software was designed for this very thing. And so that's what our software company suggested to us. Unlimited amounts of money, we could do it. I mean, I think we're gonna have to do it manually though. We'd have to add it to so we have to log into 36,000 or 30,000 bills and manually add it. So we opted for not doing that.
So ChatGPT could help.
ChatGPT could do it for us.
Just a quick update on the hydros. Hydro 3 we put on temporarily on hold because our potential ability to generate power there is pretty small. It's a small generator. And for the same kind of money it's going to cost us to finish that immediately, we've looked at spending that at more natural gas generation and getting a lot more bang for our buck. That RFP is out now. Hydro 2, which is our larger generator, the last 2 years we've struggled with keeping it even running during runoff, and this stuff comes down the river in droves. They're running these rakes every 30 minutes to 2 hours, and it fills the trough up, and then we have to physically send a guy up to clean this out. We just can't keep the water going through we got plenty of water to generate power, but I can't keep the water running through it to generate power. So it's just been brutal. And we think that the primary reason is because our sediment traps, which is what the dams are full. Third dam's full, second dam's almost full. So what we've talked about, and I came to council a few months ago and asked for $1 million to do a quick sediment, no, it didn't happen.
For
It was too-
service, right?
Yeah, it was too, we couldn't get it done fast enough with all the agencies involved. We're shooting for that for the fall, but instead of doing kind of a quick and dirty, small sediment, we're gonna do the whole thing, because once they mobilize these large pieces of equipment to remove the sediment from second dam, it doesn't make sense to just do a little chunk and then come back later and spend all that mobilization and transportation costs to do the same thing again.
Yeah.
So I will probably be coming to council once we know what that's going to look like as far as costs go. We're preparing an RFP to go out now, and I don't know what that looks like, but we're anxious to do that so that next spring we don't have this tying up all my guys 24 hours a day trying to keep the thing clean.
Are we generating quite, I mean, again, given the clean out required?
You know, it's interesting, the
Hazard
water
capacity.
flows have dropped in the last year or two because of the cooler weather. It's slowed that stuff down, and so we actually started the second generator. We have 2 generators at second dam. We only ran one because we could only get enough water to run one. We actually started a second generator today because there's less of that stuff coming because there's less water coming down the river. So anyways, this just talks about the natural gas generation I just mentioned. We're looking at 10 megawatts down at the new substation now. Just resources that are coming online. Red Mesa Solar, I hope you all saw
Yeah, that's like a week ago, right?
yeah, the little news release or whatever it is. Steel Solar, which is located over near Plymouth, Utah. Their COD means commercial operation date, so they're looking at February of 2024. NextEra Zion and Solar and Storage is a pretty new project. It's in very early study phase. They're looking at 4 or 5 years because they still have to go through all that transmission study stuff that takes forever to do. But we've signed up for 5 megawatts of the solar, 2.5 megawatts of the battery storage.
Where did you say that one's at?
That one is located somewhere down in southern Utah. I'm not exactly sure. Zion somewhere. I'm not entirely sure. The Red Mesa is down near Monticello, Utah, down on the Tribal Utility Authority property. We're in 2 geothermal study. Well, we're looking at 2 geothermal projects. One is through UAMPS. They've done an RFP, accepted submissions. We've signed up for 8 megawatts. That's very, very early. That's probably 4, 5, 6 years out. Circ Energy is actually one. You know, I told you I've had these geothermal guys come over the years and they all just disappear. This one has not disappeared. It's continued, and they're further down the process. We've signed up for 10 megawatts. It is outside of the UAMPS umbrella, which is kind of how we like it because we don't want to dilute that megawatts that are there. We're still kind of trying to get costs out of them. They really want us to sign a power purchase agreement, but we want to know what it's going to cost before we do. But they're working on getting that in place. Sunnyside Coal is it's an old coal facility located up near Price. It burns the waste coal from the mining operations. And at one time, somebody told me that was renewable, and I'm like, there's no way you could call that renewable, which they've dialed that back. But Sunnyside Coal only wants to do a PPA for 3 to 5 years. We've signed up for 10 megawatts. I think everybody else wants it too because they're resource short. We're going to get probably 6.7 megawatts. And I expect that to start in fall, but we like the timing on that because that gives some of these other projects a chance to catch up.
Again, we're hoping this just kind of gets us past, this short phase so we can, then have some of the renewables, some of the geothermal, some of those other
Natural
things
gas
kick
comes
in.
online, things like
So,
that. So, yeah, we hope it's a bridging resource for us.
just a temporary.
So with that storage you indicated on 2 of those, will that help with the base load?
Not base load, but it shaves your peak.
Yeah, so just remember, batteries is not generation, it is storage. So
Right.
it does, the way that we're approaching it with UAMPS is the batteries shape the output of the solar and later on the output of the batteries through the evening closer to what the overall UAMPS load is. Now that may not necessarily be Logan's load curve, but it's close, right? So that improves our load curve.
So I heard from somewhere that they were considering doing something nuclear in Kemmer.
Rocky Mountain Power owns lots of coal plants around the country, and they've decided that they're going to go with Bill Gates' technology, which is a molten salt reactor. And it's much further behind in approvals through the NRC and the Department of Energy than the one that UAMPS is doing, the small modular reactor. But that's kind of where they've gone. The buzz is that it can use spent nuclear fuel as fuel. So,
But didn't you say the spent fuel comes from Russia?
yeah, right now. So.
Yeah.
So they can't, we're still not close to being able to.
No, they're a ways out, but there's a lot of money, Rocky Mountain Power's
It's private
money.
investment. Again, you've got venture capital people investing in this, which,
Bill Gates
to
and
me
Buffett
says
are,
something.
have money behind this.
Plus, they have
So
the
let's name it
transmission there, so that solves one of the
Yeah,
issues.
so they got a coal plant, so if they pull,
Yeah.
they're gonna shut it down because it's coal. If they put a nuclear plant in, they've got kind of the infrastructure there to support it. They've also talked about doing that at Hunter, which is we own that in conjunction with Pacific Core. And there's a whole story behind that, but that's kind of slated for one of these salt reactors too eventually, which in that case, we should be able to get a piece of that because we own a piece of the existing coal plant that's there now. But
Great.
that's down the road.
Any news on the modular nuclear?
I've heard that it's struggling, and one of their bigger struggles is just getting subscription. They only have a bunch of small UAMPS utilities that have subscribed. And I don't know why it's not attracting subscription. I really
Because
don't.
what's their price? The price was originally like.
Yeah, it was 55 originally. It's
That
climbed
was-
quite a bit, and that was in 2018 dollars or 2018 dollars. And I still think it's a good project. I hope it goes, but I also get booted out of the sessions because they do everything in executive session, so I don't
Are
hear
they,
a lot.
I wonder if they've had trouble acquiring water.
I don't even know if they're at that point yet. I keep hearing very positive things. And the newsletter, UAMPS puts a newsletter out, the UAMPS newsletter. They should call it the UAMPS Small Modular Reactor newsletter because it doesn't talk about anything else but small modular reactor. All I get is kind of what's there. This is just a quick rundown of what our surcharges have been through so far through this fiscal year, and you can see they've kind of swung all over the place. And there's different explanations for that I won't go into now, but if you want to know why that goes from 11 cents clear up to almost 5 cents, I can certainly give you the rundown on that. A lot of it has to do with time of year costs. The other part has to do with, we have a 2-month delay, so my July billing had to delay till September, right, to go on that bill. which works okay until you have a really hot August and September billing and burn lots of kilowatt hours. And then you get to November and you got to spread that out over less because now it's cool and nobody's burning as many kilowatt hours. But I got to spread that money across those kilowatt hours, so then it jumps up 4.5 cents. I told you I was going to explain it, and I explained it. That would conclude my report.
What did you explain?
So Mark, are you gonna ask him about how many toothbrushes he has?
No, I already got my toothbrushes out, so.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. It's been a tough year.
It has been a tough year.
How many-
Easier year.
I think there needs to be some prize for being last on the agenda.
Did you guys flip a coin? How do you decide?
I don't know. Next year, we should look and flip it, right?
Have a lottery.
Yeah, have a lot of.
Well, we should just like rotate through, so last goes first.
I just wanted to thank you for waiting so long to talk about the interesting subjects.
Yes.
Ah, there you go.
You had to suffer through everything else.
I watched him fix the sewer line on First East for a week. He was like, that was one of the worst ones I've ever done.
I believe it. Okay, Public Works. Just real quick, the Public Works Department, as you're aware, we have 6 divisions within Public Works. They are listed there: GIS, engineering, facilities, fleet shops, streets and stormwater, and water and wastewater. Each one operates under their own budget. Some are general funds, some are enterprise funds. Generally speaking, it's roughly about a $30 million budget, intermingled with capital budget of about $12 million. So there's a very quick overall of Public Works. We have 84 full-time employees up to 10 to 12 part-time year-round and 10 to 15 full-time seasonal employees throughout the year.
Is that the biggest department then in the city?
No.
I don't know. I see a yes and a no.
In terms of number of employees, that would make them the largest.
I thought police was like 100, if you count
If you count dispatch,
dispatch.
then they are pretty close.
But we never
Yeah.
count dispatch.
I guess you should handle those funds.
Just some quick notes. I'm going to talk about generally the Public Works budget, operations, maintenance, those things. Sam, as part of his capital program management duties, will talk about capital projects. Our budget generally has remained unchanged from fiscal year 23, the current budget year, with a few exceptions that I'll highlight. First is a position, as the mayor mentioned in her budget presentation, Public Works Inspector Supervisor position, and I'll go into a lot more detail on that in my next slide. Secondly, we've had some increases across the board in cost, but specifically in the water maintenance. The last year, 2 years, 3, just material costs have gone up quite a bit. I asked Joe today, he kept a very detailed spreadsheet. He loves spreadsheets. On material costs for about the last 5 years, and it's interesting, roughly 25% for water meters, pipe, hoses, everything they use in the water division. Some were as high as over 100% increase, and some lower, but generally speaking, 20 to 30%. So we did an increase in that line item. Another one, streets and water both, we've seen the cost of fuel go up, and so we're about a 10% increase in those fuel budgets. Also, as the mayor proposed, salary increases, and then there's a lot of other little ones, trainings, phone costs, those sort of things. Most of those are offset by decreasing other line items, so they're mostly offset. But those are the changes you'd see if you compared last year to this year in the budget. Our rolling stock, just highlighting the major items in there. The streets concrete crew, looking at a new truck for them, a new 10-wheel plow or dump truck, and a new street sweeper. Those are all to replace existing pieces of equipment and just update them as they're effective life comes to an end, not adding new equipment. Facilities, a Kubota RTV, where he does all his plowing and facilities work with, again, replacing an existing one. And then lastly, a water vac trailer. They use that to clean out water valves, excavate around utilities, things like that. 2 crew trucks and a backhoe. Again, all replacement equipment. Going on to the Public Works inspection. I don't know if that's inspector supervisor or inspection supervisor. We'll figure that out before we finalize it.
It's good to have it both ways, right?
Sounds like the Department of Office redundancy.
We spent a lot of time on that title, and I'm sure we're not done. Yeah, so I put them both up there just to be safe. Apparently.
You had an argument in between making the slide and the title.
Yeah, probably. And just to give you some responsibilities or need for that position, we recently talked about Public Works right-of-way fees and adjusting those. It's a lot in the same conversation with this position. We currently have 2 Public Works inspectors, full-time, that cover every single right-of-way construction project you see, whether it's a city project like 100 West, or whether it's a plumber replacing a sewer lateral for one residential home. Those 2 inspectors cover all of that to the best of their ability. So as a department, and again, as Chief Jensen mentioned, kind of under the new guidelines for developing our budget this year, I met with all my division managers and kind of made a list of where are our needs, where's our holes, our shortfalls. Came up with several ideas, and I was fairly impressed. All 7 or 8 of us in the room unanimously agreed this was just the biggest one. So that was the one position we wanted to bring forward as an additional position this year. We also felt it was by far the most beneficial, meaning it benefited the most divisions and departments in the city. It'll be within the engineering division. It'll likely report directly to Darren, the city engineer. He would oversee up to 2 to 4 full-time inspectors, depending on whether or not we reorganized and put the blue stakers under that supervisor as well, and then potentially some seasonal part-time employees to help in the summer months. He would oversee all inspections for the large capital projects, the right-of-way permits, those sort of things, ensuring proper documentation, inspection records, assigning which jobs are going to which inspector, and then ultimately authorizing the release of deposits and finalizing out those right-of-way permits. So that's that position. You would notice on page 3 of your budget, if you looked at the staffing document, that's why we're going up 1 this year within Public Works.
So this person won't have anything to do with fees collected to make sure that subdivisions do all the water collection and finish doing all the things they're supposed to do?
I guess it depends on which fees you're referring to for a subdivision. If it's their,
Like if they do drainage, remember we talked about drainage, you probably maybe didn't, but there's a subdivision that did not complete all of their drainage requirements. They
Right.
didn't finish them, and they didn't landscape them, but I don't know whether we have held any, do we charge fees for that, and is this person responsible for that as well?
So that would probably fall under, when that development signs their development agreement, there's a performance bond that they give the city for that work to be done for all of their infrastructure improvements. And then this position would not oversee that development agreement or that bond, but they would be the ones inspecting that the work was done properly for the water lines, sewer lines, storm drain system. And if it's not, they would work with Darren on ensuring before that bond is released that that work gets done. So in an indirect way, yes, but they wouldn't oversee those agreements directly.
Well, there was some comment at one point in time about the fact that we don't charge enough in penalties if they don't get it done in a certain amount of time. Are we looking at any of that?
On the right-of-way permits, yes, that was part of all the deposit discussion.
Right.
But when a development is being built, it would fall more under their performance bond. And we do charge, we collect a cash bond for that as well. I don't know what your discussion was in not collecting enough in that.
Okay, well, we can
So,
talk about it later.
yeah.
It's fine.
One other note I was going to mention is in developing those right-of-way permit fees that we approved a few weeks ago, I am optimistic that it's hard to project, but those new fees will mostly, if not completely, cover this position within a year or two.
Okay.
Is that fair in our discussions? But yes. That being said, that's the overall operations and maintenance of the Public Works budget. At the end, I'd be happy to answer any questions specific you may have to it. You've seen what pages it's on. Sam will now talk about the capital program. We'll discuss it more as projects versus accounts and funds and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment is we generally, Public Works, we oversee 4 plus fund accounts for our projects. Those are listed on page 111 in your budget. Specifically the Fund 100, Class C, Transportation and Facilities. Fund 300, we have a Streets Capital and a General Capital that we use, as well as the 510 Fund and the 580 Fund. So that's where these projects, as we talk about these projects, that's where these projects are being funded through. And like Paul mentioned earlier, we're about 12-ish million a year, about. I thought I'd start, I guess, just kind of catch us up on projects you've seen or that we've talked about before and maybe give a quick update on them. So as we go down this list, 100 West Corridor, it's a big project. We're going to have completion this summer. The bridge is done, you've seen. We're working on the south side specifically right now on that bridge. 14th North, 6th West, this one was done mostly and is now back on our radar. We do have a contract signed with the railroad to complete that crossing, and it will get done this summer. So that is a huge win for us. 18th North, 6th West, that project is underway as well. Complete this summer. We aren't sure if the railroad part will get done this summer, but we're hopeful.
Sam just said 14 will get done this summer. I started sweating a little bit. I guess it's been said.
The PO for that work actually came across my desk today, so I'm optimistic.
And I signed it, so
No, it will.
that's for the paving work, so then the railroad can put the cement panels in, so fingers
Just
crossed.
real quick, if I can, on 1800 North, we thought we were at the same point as 1400 North. When the contract came back, there's a fee in there that was drastically increased and there was no reason for it. So
From the railroad again?
yeah. So I'm working through that now, and if that goes well, we'll have that contract signed hopefully within a few weeks and be mostly at the same position of 1400, other than they haven't acquired materials for 1800, but they have 1400. So they're both progressing. That was a curveball, and I expect more curveballs. We'll keep swinging.
I thought railroads went straight, that they
Physically, they do.
You haven't met Union Pacific, I guess.
One that we wanted to highlight, 7th South and 3rd South. So I guess that'd be 7th South, 1st East, and 300 South, 1st West. Those are both getting traffic signals. Those were approved in last year's budget, but those traffic signals will be going up this summer. So we're excited to see that.
Can I ask about another
Yes.
200 West? and 10th North.
It's on my next slide.
Okay.
I'll get there.
See, I'm already ahead. I got every time.
Slide ahead every time.
Are these on Main Street, 7th and 3rd?
7th is on First East, and 3rd is on First West.
Okay.
It's the one by
Where that new apartment complex is going in by the
the
rec
trio
center?
development is going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, those will be great
I know.
projects.
Yeah, it looked like it was.
Yeah.
And I guess I should add, 7th South, the county with their COG funding helped us out with funding a little bit of that one. 8th North Sewer Road Replacement, that's down on the west side of town between 8th West and 10th West. That has started work and will be done this summer. And then a big one that we're working on is 200 North and 400 North, all the way east-west through town, getting new sewer lines installed. That's in design right now, and we're anticipating construction next summer. And that was some of our city's ARPA funds are helping us with that.
And you decided to line the pipes.
We're gonna do that as much as
Correct.
possible. There's definitely some sections that we're gonna have to dig up, but we're gonna try to line as much as possible.
Yeah, we just decided to hit every UDOT road we could this summer, so.
North Logan Sewer Trunk Line, this is the large diameter sewer trunk line that connects North Logan to our treatment plant, passes through the west side of Logan. We've been working on phases of that. We got a big phase done last year. You'll see in a couple slides, we've got a budget for some more phases, but we're getting close to finishing Logan City's responsibility for that, which is great. And then Crockett Well was finished last year as we reconstructed that building and rehabbed the well.
Thanks to a donor, that building looks really nice.
The building does look really good.
It turned out really good.
All right, so these projects again are more ones that do have funding in this fiscal year or are getting constructed in this fiscal year. 1200 East through campus, we've got Logan City funds as well as some county CMPO funds that are helping us with that, and that will be constructed next summer. We're working through
With
design.
the roundabout, with
Yeah,
the oval
includes- yeah, 2 roundabouts.
The Aggie ovals.
The Aggie, yeah, we're bidding for names. 10th North, 6th West. This is a project that the need for it has grown over the last couple of years with development on the west side of town. So we are beginning design on that project, and in this year's budget, we have a lot of money being set aside for construction in future years. The same is true with the First North Bridge. We are setting aside construction money so we can reconstruct that bridge in a couple of years. One that I'm pretty excited about is traffic signal replacements. We've set aside over $1 million this year to replace some of our aging traffic signals. Specifically, we have 6 traffic signals that are on the wires that dangle across First East and First West. So with our city funds, as well as UDOT has reached out to us, and they said there may be some funds that they can help us with to replace some of the electronics. So with their partnership, we hope to get quite a few of those done this year. And if we don't get them all in our 5-year plan, we've got money to do the rest. A big one that's going to show up on this sheet and on this slide and a couple other slides, Temple View. This is the neighborhood immediately east of the LDS Temple on the hill. It's kind of like some back alleys. Those roads are in poor condition. We've been holding off redoing those roads because we wanted to align our water and sewer budgets so we could replace the utilities at the same time.
They are public roads.
They are public roads. Yes.
Because I owned a piece of property
That was an
down
unfortunate acquisition.
further, and that was not a public road.
There are, the alleys kind of behind those homes is all public.
I believe it was many years ago, they did a BID to improve the infrastructure to the point that we would take it over. So.
And there's several of them. There's Temple Heights, Temple View, what's the south one?
I don't know. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I knew it. Anyway, Temple Avenue,
Yeah.
there's several.
Wow, that's interesting, because I was absolutely convinced that was private road.
But yeah, so we've been aligning our budgets for the last couple of years, and so this is the year 2024 where we're going to have all the budgets aligned. We've got about almost just shy of 1.5 million between water, sewer, and roads to redo those utilities. And then, Jeannie, your question, 10th North, 2nd West, it has slowed because of right-of-way acquisition. We're inches from the finish line, I hope, but it keeps getting slower. Our hope is to bid it this summer and be able to start moving dirt in the fall and hit it hard next summer. That's our optimistic goal.
Well, we had just quick on that project, we had a meeting today, and I think we cleared a huge hurdle in that right-of-way acquisition, so I'm hopeful within the next couple of weeks, our right-of-way acquisition will be done.
We have most of it, right?
We have 2 properties remaining.
Okay.
We had one that we think today no longer is an obstacle. And then the second one has agreed to everything. We're just waiting for the documents to come back.
Okay.
I've been saying that for a long time.
Well, I just
I
figured
really mean it this time.
that's an intersection that has long needed a signal, so.
Yeah.
It has, yes.
The 100 North, I just realized that's a block away from me.
Correct.
Yes.
So that's the only route out of the island? Do you have an alternate? I mean, the Hidden Village subdivision.
Yes, those are all those options are on the table. We don't know what we're doing yet, but as we develop those plans, that will absolutely have to be a part of our consideration is how we address access for all the homes in the Sumac threshold area.
Before Paul, I understood Mark had made a discussion with the landowner on whatever that road is. It's a private road.
Yeah.
Axtell.
Yes.
That there was a route out to the
I believe there were several discussions that were good and productive. I don't know there was ever an agreement signed, and we've reinitiated those discussions. Good news is I think we'll limit the restriction to access to your home to 12 to 18 months.
But you know, they make these really powerful drones now that could maybe just drop and lift you up and over.
But yes, that's definitely an issue we're going to have to address before we do
Is
that.
the Corps of Engineers involved in that at all?
They're involved from a permitting as we get in the floodplain.
No construction or funding?
We don't anticipate them
Okay.
at this point.
Okay.
Water, 100 East, we will be replacing the water line on 100 East from Center Street to 300 South. The L59 apartments, if you're familiar with them, they put in some of the water line that we would have had to replace, so that's been helpful. 300 South, between 4th and 5th East, we have undersized water mains that limit fire flow if you need to use a fire hydrant, so we're going to be upsizing those mains. And if you recognize that address, that's one of our CDBG projects, and so as that came up on CDBG, we wanted to get the water line replaced so we didn't have to tear up new CDBG. So that one we snuck into this budget year to get that done. 200 North, a similar situation. We need to replace some water line under SR30 between 600 West and 1000 West. We're going to be doing a portion of that on the western end, closer to 10th West, before UDOT comes through with the SR30 project so that we can avoid tearing up their new road. And then, as I mentioned, Temple View water lines. In our sewer fund, again, Temple View will be doing sewer line replacements. The North Logan trunk line, we have another phase of that we're putting money towards. Like I mentioned earlier, we're 1 to 2 phases away from being done with Logan City's large financial contribution to this line, and then we'll be able to support North Logan in finishing that line. And then 200 South sewer main, we have an opportunity. There's a private lift station on 200 South at about 1200 West. The developer has asked us to take over that sewer lift station. We would rather not have a lift station, so we are using what funds they would have to pay to upgrade that lift station and putting that towards installing some new gravity lines with a little bit of our funds as well to eliminate that lift station. In our facilities, we have planned to replace the front entry doors at the courts building, and then our facilities staff have been systematically replacing the HVAC controls in all of our buildings, and next year is planned to replace them in the police building.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Will there be a time this summer when nobody can get anywhere?
We anticipate it'll just be May through September.
That's the goal.
So we should shop early.
All right, I'm gonna have to excuse myself because it is my husband's birthday and I do need to go out to dinner with him before he gets too old and cranky. so.
Where's your priority?
Too old and cranky.
We'll update you on Kirk's report later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Happy birthday.
I'll pass on your good wishes to him.
Where are you gonna go for dinner?
We're gonna lay down.
Question, Rich,
They were painting it today.
the document, I think it was called staffing.
They had it all taped up and they were painting it today.
Notice that some of the, just without doing actual math, I think I noticed that some of the benefit rates were different for some of the employees. Can you maybe give some information about that?
More than likely, without knowing exactly where you're looking, it's probably the difference between public safety retirement and general government retirement. And then back in, oh gosh, probably 10 years ago maybe, the URS cut off. There's a tier 1 and a tier 2 with our retirement as well. In all of those different, public safety, general, firefighter, there's a tier 1 and a tier 2, and the tier 2 benefit is cheaper. So there is a difference there as well. And so I'd imagine it's either public safety compared to somebody else or tier 1 compared with a tier 2 employee. So everybody after, I can't remember what the date is, Amber would know, like 2010, 2011, 2012, something like that.
I think 11 maybe?
People hired after that date, their benefits are cheaper. And the reason is because we couldn't afford it. As a state, we couldn't afford it any longer.
Right, and they made the retirement age, they made the number of years changed, but it's only for people on state retirement. And so all the public employees for Logan City are on state retirement. So like up at the university, when you're on PIA crap, that doesn't impact that in the same way.
That's very likely the most, or that's likely the most, that's probably the most likely reason.
Yeah.
Another reason would be an individual employee selects, let's just say they're single, not married. They would have single insurance, which is, I think about, again, Amory would know this, $8,000. And then two party is like $15,000. And then family is $23,000. And so that changes drastically as well. In fact, if you look at some of our employees that make in the range of $30,000 to $50,000 that are full-time employees, their benefits are equivalent to their pay, which is just crazy. So it's those two reasons, either retirement or what they choose for their benefits.
Can I ask a question, Jude? It says on the sheet that we get benefits. What benefits do we get?
None.
I asked
The benefit of the
about
doubt.
Yeah, we do get the benefit of the doubt. You're right.
That's a really good
That was a good answer.
The car allowance.
when we get a raise, it comes out of there.
So we call it benefits, but the amount that we pay for Social Security and Medicare, we pay that on people who are not benefited as well as those who are.
Right.
And that does come out of the benefit account. And so you're not the first person to ask that question. I wish I could come up with a better title for that account, but it's benefits.
I do think benefit of the doubt was really good.
We'll change that.
So you're paying benefits on people that don't get benefits.
It's true. It's the I guess, federal required benefits as opposed to the full-time
Optional
medical
benefits.
and optional benefits.
Okay.
And,
And on insurance, one thing that the city has opted to continue doing is paying kind of that amount, what do you call it for families and individuals? It's not called the deductible, because they pay their own deductible, it's premiums, that's, hello. So the city does continue to pay premiums for all of our employees. A lot of employers have gone away from that, and at some point we may need to do that, but at least for now we've continued, and we feel like that especially helps our employees on kind of the lower pay scale, that, you know, they just don't have to come out of that out of pocket, so.
Well, it's a huge benefit.
Right, and so we try and remind them that, you know, your raise maybe, you know, it's a pay for performance 4%, but you also have to look at the benefit of getting that premium paid by the city.
Yeah.
and particularly, I guess one nice thing about it is those who are lower paid, I mean, that turns into a significant benefit when we pick up a 15% increase on family benefits for those who are on the lower end of the spectrum. So hopefully that kind of helps evens out things.
And hopefully if they think about changing jobs over salary, it's like, look at the whole package, you know, the benefit package. So we try and stress that,
Yeah.
Thank you.
assuming the council approves this budget. That's what we're recommending.
All of that. And occasionally people who present will say something about how Rich approved, Rich did this. I hope you all know that Rich conferred with the mayor always before doing anything.
He's very good about that.
This is the mayor's proposed budget, it's not Rich's budget.
But we do appreciate all Rich does to keep us,
That's a word salad.
to keep
That's
us.
the word salad.
Any other questions before we adjourn our budget for the
regular portion.
regular portion of the budget?
No,
No? Adjourn, reconvene.
you're so good at it.
Okay, here we go.
I wanted it to be official.
Redevelopment Agency budget, fiscal year 2024. There's some good things happening and more to come.
There's a lot of things
And
happening.
we're appreciative to you, the RDA board, for helping facilitate that. So one of the big items, of course, is the plaza. We're nearing completion. It's fun to see all the various improvements falling into place, and we're expecting sometime July-ish, I think, more or less. I mean, I'm not gonna,
I'm not saying a date yet because I'll be
that would
wrong.
be wrong. It could be later. I mean, it's
No,
later, but
well, could be soon, maybe,
Are we having any movement on
Could be
Plaza
when?
45?
hoping maybe by the very end of
on this
June.
next-
Okay, so that,
Before
I'm not
I
back till
know.
21st.
Next slide.
You're all over it.
Yeah, it would be like the 29th or 30th probably.
Hopefully I'm back before you guys.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, it's exciting that it's coming. It will be here before too long, put it that way. So, with that, part of the funding that was approved is for the Plaza 45 building. Jeannie, you were asking about that. So we have had, interest from various parties. We've taken various parties through the building, answered questions, met with some of them, and we'll continue to show the property. And once we feel like we've got the appropriate deal structure, both from a monetary standpoint as well as a use standpoint, then we'll move it forward. But and we feel like the timing of just the visual of the building and the plaza coming together. I mean, for a while there, it looked like a bomb hit it, but now it's starting to look beautiful, and people will be able to better visualize what's going to happen there and the benefits of being adjacent to that. So,
Yep.
And we're seeing already from the Center Street project and this happening, there's been a lot of private businesses doing a lot of great things on Center Street. So a combination of public-private, I think, is just creating a really powerful nexus where it seems to be a mounting enthusiasm, and I think we're going to see a lot of good things. So we'll work to continue to show Plaza 45 and get that sold in the coming months.
Okay.
Question, do we know when is the tabernacle going to be done?
November.
We just don't know what year. No. I say that about our project.
That's good.
No. Again, just like our projects,
Yeah.
they take longer than they think. But again, I mean, everybody's investing in downtown. That's what's so exciting right now. I mean, right now we have 3 parking lots ripped off, but it's like, we're redoing buildings, we're redoing parking lots, we're redoing buildings. And I mean, this is exactly what we wanted to happen downtown. And I think that first little seed project of Center Street is like the Roger Brooks, just 1 block. And, you see the vision and you catch it. And again, your willingness to invest has
Although
been
it wasn't a
huge.
teeny project.
No. That's true.
She's being modest.
But again, I keep telling people, we've had a great partnership with our council because, we couldn't get any of this done without funding. And we've, I think, worked really together to develop a vision and implement it, and we are.
Yeah, we had
finally
some
getting
bumps,
things done.
but I think that, once the plaza's done, people will really begin to see the potential for all of downtown. It's like it'll just bleed a little bit,
How many housing units, starting at 0, but L59 and the one on First South and the Third South and the bridge, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, I don't know the
Probably
exact
close to
number, but
400,000 or 500,000.
That's really good.
I'm just ballparking, but I'd have to stop and count them with my pencil, but there's a lot.
and I digress, but I was in a meeting today at the county.
Did I say 1,000?
Yeah.
I meant 500.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
My mind's riveted on dollars tonight, so that's fine.
I was at a meeting today at the county, and one of the planners just said to me, I'm so impressed with, First East with the townhomes that are kind of in the front, that break up the higher density behind. And it's like, that was a long, hard fought battle, but again.
I think we.
the only thing I feel badly about is the driveway between those two sets of townhomes is dead center onto somebody's front window.
Sorry.
And I could not have foreseen that. But I looked at that today and went, so it'll be headlights all the time. But
With all of those downtown projects, housing with condominiums, I think I heard Mill Creek was priced around a couple thousand per unit.
depends on if it was a studio or not. I think the studios were quite a bit less.
Would we expect the similar pricing for all of these? And having so many more available, would that drive the price down on those units?
I think the demand for housing, especially apartments, is still strong, so I don't see the price coming down in the near term, but if we head into a recession, maybe.
And in some cases, I think they're trying to, their pro forma is going to require something, a certain level of rent to give a return to their investors. So, but I think you're right. I think it's about 500 units when you add it all together. Because I think Third South is like 70, and
Yeah.
Mill Creek is probably
150.
150, and then L59 is 200.
No, it's
That's
about 120, I think.
Oh, is it 120? Okay,
But
so it's close.
The Plaza 45, is
Yeah.
it supposed to be commercial, the entire building?
commercial, the entire building, the intent for the ground level is restaurant-type uses, synergize with the plaza, provide an amenity, and then the second and third floor could be most likely office space.
I gotta tell you
Could be a
how
lot of
busy
different things.
the brew pub is.
Oh, Prodigy?
Yeah, you should,
Oh, I know.
somebody should be like, oh, wow, yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
pent-up desire to go out to eat.
Well, and again, the Starbucks coming in, 2 doors to the south of the plaza, that does not have a drive-through. That tells you that
Yeah.
we're developing a walkable, downtown where, obviously this national franchise thinks they can do well in,
Where is Starbucks now?
It's
To the
just
south.
kind of 2 doors, 2 businesses to the south of the
Where
Plaza
the,
building.
where the
45.
Hallmarkish,
No, it's the
It's
one that
north of
has
that.
had the for rent
It's
sign in it.
actually immediately adjacent to the plaza.
I guess you're right, not 45, but 41.
It's 37 North Main.
Okay.
is where
Yeah,
Starbucks
Bluebird
would be.
moving, working.
Oh, they're working on it, yes, they are.
Okay.
That raises a good point. I mean, one of the concerns with, the center block, trying to recruit users or an investor to that Plaza 45 building is parking. But with Starbucks coming in, that, to the mayor's point, that's a nice endorsement that it doesn't all need to be traffic driven. It can be, pedestrian reliance.
Well, one other thing we've considered that we may bring to council is, do we need to change some of our parking requirements that could allow bed and breakfast there, or Airbnb? Because, great, then, they're really only there at night. They'd have to have permission to park in the lot overnight, which has been the challenge, but, you then get benefits. So there's some things we're thinking about, but sorry, we should let Kurt finish so we can
That's
all
good.
go
Good
home,
discussion
right?
and it's relevant, so.
Should be quiet.
Okay, RDA revenue. Here's a quick line item summary. So property tax expected to be received about $375,000. There is some rent money from a retail building, commercial building that the city owns on First West on the center block. So you'll notice that the revenue is significantly lower than what it was last year. Last year it was budgeted, I think, about $3 million. And the reason for that is that we've had, just this past December, 3 of our redevelopment project areas expire, if you will, meaning they no longer will receive property tax revenue or tax increment. I just wanted to show you this slide to give you a quick idea of what that means. It provides a nice revenue lift for the taxing entities. So each of those columns represents a project area, and then you can see on the far left the taxing entities benefit from the closure of that project area. And these numbers are in terms of new annual revenue. So that's every year they'll get that lift. So the downtown RDA, will create a lift of over $500,000 per year to the taxing entities. Of course, most of that goes to the school district.
When does this start?
That'll be next spring.
Next spring? Good.
Northwest RDA is $324,000. South Main RDA is a huge lift of about $1 million. So all told, that's about a $2 million lift to the taxing entities. And keep in mind, that's in addition to nearly $1 million that they're already getting in lift from the interim revenue sharing agreements that were put in place on.
Logan City School District is going to end up with $1 million more a year.
Yeah. So it's significant. So I think it's just a testament to the fact that RDAs can be, valuable vehicles to, facilitate development that's profitable and beneficial for the taxing entities. Okay, so that leaves us now with 2 active project areas. An active meaning that we're still receiving revenue, property tax revenue. So we have the Automall CDA. You can see its expiration date on the right, 2036, and the other one being the South Main River CRPA with more or less the same expiration date. So that's really hard to see, but these on a map, you can see where those are located. Automall, of course, way up north on Main, the orange block there, and then the yellow block down on South Main is the South Main River. Inactive project areas, now keep in mind that we do have in the budget some line item expenditures budgeted for these. So they're inactive in the sense that we're no longer receiving revenue, but that does not mean they're entirely inert, that there's nothing happening there. We still have some fund reserve that is being deployed in various ways in some of these project areas. And there's a map of all the inactive ones. I won't go through them all, but there's several.
So what happens with Quail Meadows?
Quail Meadows is, that one's, of all those there, probably the most inactive or inert in that the city's already funded its contribution to that project, which was some of the infrastructure that went in, really to help help the developer so that they could price those lots such that they could do single-family homes instead of just defaulting to more multifamily, and could do larger lots too. So we're essentially done with that. We do keep a sliver of dollars in there just for some administrative expenses if they crop up, but most times we don't have any.
But if they don't ever finish it, what happens?
We have no clawback on that. Our incentive was just to get that first phase in, which, I mean, the infrastructure's in, a lot of the homes are built, but we didn't ever structure it such that there was any kind of a clawback.
Okay.
And I think we put in, I'm trying to remember, about 325,000, something like that. So it wasn't a huge, I mean, that's a nice help to it, certainly, but not a huge sum of money either.
But I believe it is platted, so that hopefully it will.
Don't think so. But what I don't know is, I mean, will we be on the hook for anything else in the long run?
No,
No.
nothing.
Okay.
Although the original plan did call for the center circle, Dillhickey,
Yeah.
would be a park.
Yeah.
And so there is some, if it's ever
That's true.
deeded to us, I guess an obligation there maybe to maintain and finish.
But we're not getting anything back from them in terms of tax increment.
No.
But we will get, we're not, as it's developed, we would get additional property tax, whatever
Okay.
that's worth.
Okay.
But because we're not, because it's an area, but we're not taking anything off of it. Every development that goes in there does result in
Yeah.
additional property.
1,800
West,
north and
third
about
west,
8
right in
west. Yeah.
Okay.
On the
yeah.
south side of
It's not
1800 North.
Okay. Well, I know we've talked in the past, I mean, that's a different kind of a discussion. I'm sure it's not a budget discussion, but we have talked about, trying to regenerate neighborhoods using that sort of tool, but also talking about how it was not, the increase in property values wasn't enough to warrant creating the structure to do it.
Yeah, what we used was affordable housing funds.
I actually used general tax increment. We were able to use
Oh,
a
that's right.
vehicle called the RDA Housing Fund, so some reserve tax increment was able to be funneled into that new project area. So it wasn't, it was just general property tax funds.
Okay.
But that maneuver will be more difficult in the future because we don't, in the past, we had these large areas that would be developed with commercial activity, which generated some increment that we could use over here. It's going to be less likely in the future, so, but it was a great maneuver for that
Okay.
place.
Okay.
Okay, just touching on some of the project areas on some of the more significant expenses. Within the downtown RDA, aside from the plaza, we do have some development agreement obligations. We have the facade program in the budget, some parking related items related to maintenance and leases. And of course, there is a plaza item there, the recreational equipment, some of those, for lack of a better word, like lawn toys is what came to mind, but I don't think
That's a really good description.
Okay.
The big chess set.
Yeah, there you go. So we've got 90,000 in the budget to acquire those, and so we're good to go. There's just a picture of L59 as it relates to the development agreements. That's one that will trigger this year. So we are participating on that project.
I like how those look.
Renewal is another one. I don't look too close at that rendering because it has changed
It
subtly.
doesn't look a lot like that anymore.
Okay. Yeah, it did change, you're right, Jeannie. This one will probably be carried forward just because the construction is just starting, so the likelihood is that'll be a carry forward come spring.
Is that also in a
Opportunity zone?
An RDA?
Yeah, is it in the opportunity, is that in an opportunity zone as well?
That's a great question.
I know L59 is.
Does it go all the way to First West off of Main Street?
It
I
does.
can't remember. Does
It borders, it goes down Main Street all the way to South Main and starts bending southwest a little bit, but I don't know if it reaches I'd have to check on that, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's close, if not, it's close to the board, but I can follow up with you. Facade program, just an example of a project there, so that's been a nice program to have in the downtown RDA for a long time. In the Logan River RDA, there's one significant line item there, and that's the incentive for Cytiva. They're expanding, making about a $230 million capital investment, 400 new jobs over 10 years. That construction's still ongoing. That's a rendering of what they're building, but we should probably, I'm guessing, see that completed sometime this year. Maybe.
It's getting there.
It's getting there.
Yeah.
Another one that triggers, this is the South Main River CRPA. This is the Logan Gateway project. The office, retail is mostly built out, not quite complete, but there's actually another fourth retail building that will come in the future sometime. The housing, they are planning to do the housing, which will be on the back side or the west side of the office building. Okay, in the Logan North retail section of the budget, that's where we house most of the affordable housing reserves. Some of those funds will be used or budgeted for a couple of housing programs, one of which is the Welcome Home Owner Logan program. This is the first time, it's not really first time home buyer, but lower income home acquisition assistance, where we can pay up to $7,500 for buyers anywhere within the city limits. The last couple of years, obviously, this program has not been really utilized at all because of housing costs, but we do have it in the budget just, in case things moderate a little bit and there's opportunity for that program to be used. The other program is the Northern Utah Neighborhood Improvement Program. Both of these are administered by Neighborhood Housing Solutions. This is for significant type repairs. Could be a roof, could be broken up driveway, heating, wiring issues, fuse box, those kind of things. The money in the budget is to help us fulfill our commitment that we made previously. Some of those transactions are still coming through, and we may even have some extra dollars that we could participate on other improvement projects with them under this program. Just in closing here a little bit, the budget, there you can see the total, $2.1 million, significantly less again than last year's. We talked about that a little bit earlier. We do have, as of the end of March, you can see on the left, the RDA fund balance is just shy of $6 million, almost $600,000 in affordable housing reserves. And what was I going to point out here? Oh, we are, because of a lot of projects happening, some of those project areas expiring and so forth, the RDA is running, a little less liquid, if you will, from a cash flow standpoint. However, it's important to bear in mind that there's investments that the RDA has in multiple real estate properties, and those could be sold. So Plaza 45 being one of those, that once that's sold, that will bring, a significant influx of revenue back into the RDA. The other properties that the RDA has money into is the corner here on 300 North Main. Right.
roughly about 1.25 million, I think, in that corner. The commercial building on First West, there's, you know,
Where
that.
Jump the Moon is.
Yeah.
What'd you say, James?
Where Jump the Moon is.
Where Jump the Moon is, yes. And then the corner, the vacant corner at 3rd South, 1st East, there's some RDA money into that. So even though we're trending a little less liquid, I just wanted you to know that there's assets, if you will, capital in these properties that will convert to cash at some point in some cases.
And then are we considering creating any new RDAs at this point in time?
We constantly are giving that thought. So looking really,
Watch for the next agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Is-
There's
The
your,
next slide.
there you go.
It is
Great question.
It is worth mentioning that fund balance and the affordable housing, well, the fund balance is almost all committed.
Yeah.
It's going out the door as we speak. The affordable housing, there's some tentative commitments. So We're gonna take this down
We just
significantly.
talked about committing some of that, so.
Yeah. Okay,
Any projects lined up for that corner on 300?
I'm sorry.
Any projects being discussed for that corner on 300 North?
300
Oh,
South.
You know,
No, it's based on
we've
free.
been talking with people on and off for probably a decade. Some of them get, you know, a little more, what's the word, seasoned than other conversations. There's still some viable candidates that I'm still having conversations with, so that's definitely a focus area, particularly with the library, you know, being done. I mean, I think all of us will have our eye on that corner and say, yeah, but what about that corner? So we'll put a lot of
We just
effort
don't,
into.
we just don't want to build something so tall that it obscures the view of those beautiful
Oh,
patios that we
patios, yeah.
created.
We'd still have views to the east and west.
Yeah.
And the west, yeah.
I know, but it would be a shame to box it in with something
Great
tall.
to look at to the north.
2-story max.
That'd be great.
Yeah, town center one there, so.
Yeah, you want some mass there in TC1, so.
Yeah. So, more good things to come.
Did you write out what the view looks like?
It's going to be gorgeous.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Maybe we can use RDA funds to buy
Can we-
those chairs.
Sure.
Those chairs that you have to pay to sit in.